DeFi Slate team.
What's up, y'all? Real quick, if you like the DeFi Slate content on Twitter and YouTube and Substack, please give us a like and a subscribe on this video on YouTube. Join our channel, join the community. We'd really appreciate it. We're pumping this stuff out for y'all as much as we can, and we really enjoy the support and the community that we've built. Thank you very much and enjoy. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 51 of the DeFi by Design podcast. Here today to talk all things DAOs. So if you've heard, 2022 is the year of DAOs. And basically what you're going to learn today is how to get active in some DAOs, kind of what a DAO is, some challenges that they have to overcome, the legal status, how to be a contributor, kind of what the hierarchy looks like, some more community-based DAOs, and the distinction between those and kind of larger scale treasury-based DAOs, if you will. Also kind of how tokens are a part of DAOs and how they are valued and viewed within the community. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a really productive conversation because I think 2022 is really going to be the year of the DAOs. So, of course, here today with Robbie for episode 51. It's been a long time coming, and yeah,
Andy, happy to be here and stoked to be talking to Spencer from DAOHaus. I'm really interested in kind of digging into the taxonomy of DAOs, like Spencer mentioned kind of ahead of this call. The taxonomy, laying out the different types of DAOs, what makes one DAO different from the next, and then how we can utilize that really brand new corporate structure, this method of organizing human coordination and bringing it into the most effective circle. So there's different kinds of DAOs. We'll unpack some of the different types. And really digging into what tokens mean for different DAOs, how we can extract value, how value is added, and really just how DAOs bring together all the different cryptocurrencies in the ecosystem and play into the decentralized nature of cryptocurrency as a whole. So I'll pass it over to Spencer. How you doing, man? And stoked to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Really excited to talk to you guys. That list of topics sounds super juicy. I know we only have like a set amount of time, but like the DAO space is so big and so interesting that I feel like I could just talk about that stuff for, I don't know, like 24 hours straight. Yeah, so excited to dig in here, and hopefully I can do it in a concise way so we we stay within our time limits.
Yeah. Let's start off by kind of exploring the structure of kind of how DAOs are created. So I think a good model for how our audience can kind of think of a DAO structure is basically there's this level of distributed authority in terms of you have like different sections of DAOs that are kind of led by different people that all kind of contribute to the overall goal or purpose. So you kind of have like this level of delegation from one sector of the DAO, from the treasury to the business development to the product or the coding. So you kind of have these different sectors of a DAO that have like kind of trees under them of different people working on different things. So yeah, let's dive into the mental model of how we can view this abstract concept of a DAO and its relation to a typical multi-member LLC or company.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between at least kind of like culturally or in terms of like how things actually happen in a DAO versus a more like a traditional company is that wherever you do have hierarchy or leadership, it's more emergent rather than kind of imposed top down. In a company, you typically have like one founder or two founders or like some very small group of people that started the thing and are in charge, like quite literally in charge, and have the power to make all the decisions if they want. Often they delegate to other people, but they have the power to like fire those other people or override their decisions. And in a DAO, that is simply just not the case. So wherever there is, and it's not the case because everybody in the DAO co-owns the DAO to some degree or another. There's different types of DAOs handle that in different ways, and it gets expressed or it's codified in different ways. But every DAO has a model of co-ownership by all of its members. Some members have less ownership, like a smaller share. Some members have a higher share, but all of them have some degree of share and some degree of ownership and control over what happens in the DAO. And what that means is something really powerful, which is that it creates an opportunity for leadership and inspiration to kind of emerge from anywhere in the DAO. Any of the members, or even somebody outside of the DAO, can join and kind of emerge as a leader. There's so much more room for serendipitous activity and new possibilities that in a DAO than in a traditional company, because that is the like kind of the foundational nature of what's happening in a DAO versus a traditional company. So oftentimes you do see that there are kind of different working groups emerging, like you were describing, sort of a group focused on treasury management, a group focused on product development, a group focused on maybe some legal aspects, a group focused on community management. And that is actually an interesting, like fascinating part of what's happening in DAOs today, where DAOs are across the board are kind of grappling with this concept of, okay, we're this flat organization. We don't have top-down leadership. How do we self-organize in a way that we can actually accomplish the things we want to accomplish without like all falling down all over each other trying to interact? Yeah. And there's this one interesting trend has been this idea of DAO composability, where you might have smaller working groups that almost are structured as DAOs themselves within a much larger DAO. And I think this is the case for really, really large DAOs. I think the Bankless DAO is a really good example of this, where they kind of just like did this one big bang thing to all of their listeners and subscribers, and all those people then were just in the DAO, and they had to figure out what was going on. And over time, we've seen lots of different work streams and guilds, basically sub DAOs within that larger DAO form, and that's been really interesting to watch. Similar things have been happening within the 𝗀 ecosystem. They've got their governance 2.0 structure that kind of identifies and defines different work streams that are led by different people who have sort of emerged as leaders, but they're not top-down leaders. They're more bottoms-up leaders. Gotcha. And even within DAOHaus itself, so we build DAOHaus. We build the DAOHaus platform. We can talk as much or a little bit about that as we'd like here, but we are our DAO ourselves, and we've identified that actually about a year ago, we figured out that we really needed to separate what we were doing into a bunch of different sub DAOs or circles, as we call them. And so we have a circle for product development that we call Magesmiths. We have a circle for tokenomics and incentives that we call alchemists, and we have a circle for communications and community and governance stuff, which we call rangers, and then there's paladins for kind of internal operations. So this idea that
like there's sub DAOs to every DAO effectively is, so to kind of take the abstraction away from this concept for those who are just, still kind of grasping from what even this is. So basically we've got this bigger, broader structure that is comprised of groups of people who are probably skilled at these certain things, so that they at least have an interest in participating in that specific aspect of this broader company or this broader DAO, as you want to think about it. And so that kind of allows you to have multiple working groups for the broader purpose. As you're saying, there's different guilds for the Bankless DAO. You kind of get everybody in. So I think like something that our listeners are probably now thinking is, okay, so I'm probably not going to create a DAO, well, just because I don't, I probably don't have that huge of an audience, or I'm not really sure what I'm doing yet. But like, how do I get involved with one of these DAOs? How do I join one of these working groups and participate and actually, have some meaningful contribution? Is it as simple as going on Discord and joining? Are there any restrictions? I guess let's get into the openness aspect and kind of how our listeners can join a DAO, this year.
Yeah, so this is another area where DAOs really excel over traditional companies. In a traditional company, you have to go through some sort of like HR hiring process, submit your resume, talk to 8 people, and they probably reject you for some other random reason. In a in a DAO, though, it's the one thing that we like to talk about is that in a DAO, the membrane between the DAO itself and the outside world is much more permeable, very permeable, in fact. And working for a DAO can involve as much commitment or as much engagement as you would like. So it's actually not very difficult for somebody to come into a DAO and start working just a couple hours a week, or just trying out one little project or doing one little thing. And then they can expand their involvement and their engagement from there, or they can continue working for lots of different DAOs in very small ways. The flexibility is really a huge part of this. That said, it can be a little bit daunting to figure out how do you actually get started. Now there are so many DAOs out there, and they're all doing different interesting things. So it can be a little bit hard to figure out where to start. There's probably many different answers to this, but the one that I think is, if I weren't already working for a few different DAOs, what I would probably do is try to figure out what I want to do. What is sort of a personal mission that I have, and then see if there is a DAO that is oriented around running after that objective or that mission. So if I wanted to build a DeFi product, then I might go look at some of the DeFi DAOs out there and see if I can get involved. If I wanted to talk or do research and write and kind of curate social tokens that are out there and kind of do some kind of social token landscape analysis, then I might go find Forefront and join their community. If I wanted to be a freelancer and kind of work in the Web3 space in a freelance style, then I would go find something like Raid Guild or D-Org that are going to basically Web3 development shops or agencies organized as DAOs providing services to clients. And really at that point, it's once you figure out what you want to do, it's a matter of figuring out then what is the engagement model for that DAO. So many of them are just kind of come into our Discord, say hello, say what you want to do, check out our GitHub, see our good first issues, and just like start jamming on something, and then tell us what you did and how you did it, and then we can continue figuring out what else you can do.
I'm just going to stop you right there. So in that instance where you join a community, you join a Discord, and you provide some value to the DAO, I guess the question is kind of how does the DAO create a shared understanding of like prioritizing compensation for these contributions? So, the monetary compensation, but also like the status or the reputation or the governance proposal power, or kind of like the operational role that you carry. So if Rob and I hop in Forefront and start contributing to social tokens, we put a few hours in and report back, how does the DAO kind of assess, okay, that's what that was worth, here's what you get, or here's like, how does the compensation kind of work for those those in our community who now understand, you've laid out some DAOs, you've laid out kind of how to get in and how to contribute, but kind of what do they get in return, and how do DAOs kind of assess the prioritization?
Yeah, that is a big topic of what I would say is like ongoing research and experimentation within DAOs. I can't speak specifically to how Forefront handles it, or many other DAOs handle it, but I can speak to what we at DAOHaus have been trying to figure out. We've actually are just now going through sort of a revamp of our compensation process. And I can get into that a little bit, but really the big challenges are how like with this kind of this tension between wanting to make sure that you are paying people only for the work that they've done, so that it's much easier to assess the value that they've delivered and the benefits that they have kind of conferred on the DAO, versus wanting to attract new talent into the DAOs, perhaps with some sort of more consistent pay. Both of those are pretty challenging, especially when there's a tension between them, and especially because in a DAO there's no top-down CEO to kind of just declare here's what we're going to do, and then everybody kind of has to follow that. So one really interesting mechanic that has started to emerge is this idea of more collective bottoms-up assessment of the value of other people's work. One of the tools that is starting to be used by lots of different DAOs, and that's called 𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏 is really cool because it is basically a way for all the individuals that work with all the other individuals within the DAO. It's a way for each of those people to essentially have their say in how much everybody else should get paid for a given thing. And there's lots of different ways to use that mechanic. At DAOHaus, what we're doing is we're using that almost as bonuses for everybody in the DAO. So we have our house token, which is part of the token that kind of accrues value as the DAOHaus ecosystem grows and expands and delivers value to people. So what we do is we basically give house tokens based on this 𝗏𝗏 bottoms-up assessment of the work that everybody has done about every month to our contributors. What we also do though is we say,
real quick, Spencer, sorry, are those tradable on Uniswap? Do those have an Ethereum value? So, or those kind of more community value, like as far as like seniority goes, kind of like I'm a veteran, I have this many tokens. What's the value proposition, real quick, of the house token, and
of the house
more broadly, like of
yeah.
tokens for DAO? Are they tradable, or more so kind of like socially aspects for within the DAO?
Yeah, so there's a ton of interesting stuff relating to tokens and DAOs. So with DAOHaus specifically, it's a little bit different than a lot of other DAOs. Our house token, it actually, so maybe I'll start by talking about how a lot of other DAOs kind of handle it, and then I can come back to DAOHaus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but as soon as our audience hears they get a token, they're going to be wondering, okay, what is this token going to do for me?
Yeah. So okay. So I'll just really quick. The house token does have a value. I can't recall exactly what it is now. The majority of what DAOHaus, the most of DAOHaus's governance, which is handled by a broader organization called 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, which we can go back to. That is all happening currently on the 𝗫𝗏 network. The reason for that is DAO governance is expensive from a gas perspective. So about a year ago, given the gas situation on mainnet, we had to make a decision about somewhere else to handle our main governance. So that is all currently happening on 𝗫𝗏. Remains to be seen whether that's going to be where we are in the long run, especially with lots of other layer 2s, rollups, et cetera, coming online with cheaper gas environments. So the house token currently is liquid on Uniswap, which is on 𝗫𝗏. That may change over time. But a lot of DAOs use their token as the way to define membership in the DAO. So if you have the token, then you can vote on Snapshot and you can access the kind of the channels within the Discord server via collab land or something like that. And that is a pretty low friction model. It means that membership in the DAO is permissionless, which is pretty cool. And for those reasons, that's what I think I would say the majority of organizations that call themselves DAOs do. Personally, I think that's pretty dangerous. I think there's a lot of risk that exists when you use a token with financial value and that is permissionlessly traded on a decentralized exchange to manage membership in your DAO as well as governance over your DAO. There's a lot of risks associated with that. And one of them is like adversarial risk. Like you could have if there's a DAO that you're competing with or just some whale that doesn't like you, they can relatively easily buy up a bunch of your token and have a pretty big influence over what's happening in your DAO.
And real
another
quick,
one
Spencer,
is
I was listening to a pod with 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 and the Bankless guys, and they're talking about basically layer 0, which is like if something were to happen like that, they're like beyond coin voting, there could potentially be like a second backstop for like something else, some other form of basically the community coming together without having to hard fork their entire DAO and like move elsewhere to say like, okay, no, like that's not going to happen. Interesting to see how that develops, but yeah, that just came to mind because like, as you say, if a whale does do that and then they control the voting and then, well, shit, you're kind of screwed there.
Yeah, especially if you have a lot of like ETH or DAI in your or some other tokens in your treasury. In the worst case scenario, the whale could just kind of essentially 51% attack you with their votes and then take all the money. Realistically, that's probably pretty difficult, especially for the larger DAOs with high token market caps. But that actually is another risk where if a lot of the attention and positive energy of your DAO is oriented around like your token price going up, then if it doesn't continue to go up or something happens and it goes down for whatever reason, maybe because somebody manipulated a market somewhere or because all of Ethereum started to crash or something, then there's kind of unknown risks of how your community and how your DAO is going to respond to that. Yeah, so there's lots of challenges with using a token to kind of define and drive your DAO governance. So instead of that at DAOHaus, what we do is, and actually we focus on DAOs that don't even need to have a token. At DAOHaus, the DAOs that basically DAOHaus is a platform for launching and running 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 DAOs. So 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 DAOs are permissioned. Voting shares are non-transferable, and you also have when you're in the DAO, you have a certain type of exit right called rage quit, and rage quit is really a magical governance concept that basically gives anybody in the DAO the right to leave with their portion of the funds that have been put into the DAO at any point. So if somehow a whale were to come in and have like more than half the shares, even then, if they tried to pass a proposal to give themselves all of the money, everybody else could, before that proposal got executed, even if it did pass, everybody could rage quit and leave with their money. So this was essentially that's a mechanism for them to coordinate around a hard fork, actually, even though there are assets like ETH and ETH benefits as well. And so we focused on 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 DAOs at DAOHaus. And the governance of DAOHaus is handled by it's basically an Uber DAO. So we call it 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, and that is comprised of some of the biggest and earliest DAOs to use the DAOHaus platform. So 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 is a 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 DAO, and the members of 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 are other DAOs that use the DAOHaus platform. Our kind of core contributor DAO is one of those. So together with all the other DAOs, we kind of control and govern the direction of the DAOHaus ecosystem and platform, including the house token supply. So that is another example of kind of this composability of DAOs, where all of us are in this big DAO together, and then there's lots of other DAOs underneath. And then for us, our sort of what we call the War Camp DAO, the core contributor DAO, we have all these other sub DAOs under that. The way that the house token works is that if you're a DAO and you have you have at least 500 house tokens, then you can tribute those house tokens into 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, and by doing so become a member of 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵. So we're using the token kind of as a way that it's all
participate, continue to earn, essentially have power within the system with these tokens. And then if they ever want to leave, they can rage quit or essentially unstake.
So yeah, exactly. So one question that we get a lot is, okay, so rage quit means that anybody can leave with their portion of the assets at any time. Does that mean that that somebody can just rage quit like the entire treasury that they had no part in, that like they didn't put into the DAO? And the answer is yes, if that's how you've structured things. If your DAO is making lots of revenue and all the revenue is like coming into the main treasury, then yes, any member could rage quit with their portion of all of that revenue. But one of the things that we've been working on quite a lot within DAOHaus is giving DAOs tools to do other things and have some more flexibility with how they handle their operations and their kind of financial flows. So we do a lot of work on what are called minions in the Moloch DAO world. Minions are basically like helper smart contracts for Moloch DAOs. And they do a few things. One, they allow a Moloch DAO to interact with any other smart contracts, so do kind of arbitrary transactions. So do a swap on Uniswap, do lots of other things within DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing they do, though, is they can store funds. So the minions can hold funds that are outside of the reach of rage quit. So in that sense, a Moloch DAO can govern a separate treasury or a separate vault that can store other funds. And that's currently how 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 works. So there's the main treasury where all the house tributes go from those other DAOs, but then there's a vault on the side which is not rage quittable, which holds all, or I guess the outstanding, or holds the house token supply. So those DAOs can't just like rage quit with so much of the house token supply that they didn't really have a
right. They can't quit with the entire supply. It was only what they put up into this like core of the DAOHaus to essentially their tribute, what they're staking to be a part of the 𝗵𝗶 DAO. Solid. So you brought up the Moloch DAO and how some of these it has certain properties where these shares are non-transferable. You have different functions where you can interact with the DAO, whether that's rage quit or contribute in a matter of different ways. What are some of the other DAO types aside from Moloch DAOs, and how do they differ? And maybe we can break it down as far as like the majority of DeFi DAOs, governance tokens are approaching DAOs in this way. We have Moloch DAOs, and then there's probably some other types of DAOs that you want to unpack as well. Yeah.
So at a high level, I think there's Moloch DAOs and other somewhat similar constructs that are really oriented around creating a baseline infrastructure for a community to kind of emerge from that. So they don't really specify a lot of logic in the smart contract about how the DAO is going to work. They kind of just set this baseline, and then a community can kind of emerge from that. It is a permissioned community, so new members basically have to apply with a membership proposal. That is very different from these larger token defined DAOs. So one kind of set of token defined DAOs are like the comp or compound governance, or I guess Uniswap, which is sort of a fork of that, or actually Nouns DAO, which is a fork of that using NFTs instead of ERC20s for governance. And those are pretty cool because they're permissionless token defined DAOs where voting and governance is fully on chain. So if I have comp token, then I know that my influence over what's happening in the compound ecosystem with the compound protocol is direct. So when I vote, I am directly influencing the outcome of that vote. And if there's an execution that happens as a result of the vote, I will have directly influenced or caused that execution with my portion of the votes. There are other DeFi and other types of protocols that are using a slightly different approach. And my hot take is that the approach that they're using is not quite structurally a DAO. It's more like an aspirational DAO. And the reason I think this is that the approach they take is often one of, so there's a token, and the token allows you to come into the Discord, and the token allows you to vote on snapshot. But the results of those snapshot votes, which is an off-chain, really just a signaling vote based on the number of tokens you have. The result of that is that there is a multi-sig that 3 to 7 or 9 kind of key privileged members of the organization control, and that structure really relies on the reputational forces where that the members of the multi-sig face. So basically, it's relying on them recognizing that if they don't do what the snapshot signaling vote says they should do, then they may cause some strife within the community and the rest of their organization.
And I assume, Spencer, that there's different weights for different activities. We to kind of answer the broader question that I had back as far as how compensation goes. So we got the DAO structure, the sub DAOs. We got the joining the DAOs through the Discord and kind of getting active, checking out their coordinate or their GitHub or even their Notion to see what you can do. You can get in there, you can do a task, and then the answer to how you get compensated is typically in that token. And so now where we're getting at is kind of the, who gets to decide on, who gets basically paid. And so I assume there's some sort of tooling that is available to assess the weight of certain activities in the DAO.
When you say weight, what do you mean specifically?
The comparison and compensation for somebody who writes the weekly newsletter versus somebody who is doing the social media account versus somebody who is handling the treasury, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think those things are definitely valued differently. I don't think there's a standard way that DAOs are valuing those. Sometimes DAOs will put out bounties for certain things, and they'll kind of assign a particular value to that. And so if somebody completes that bounty, then they'll get the whatever tokens were associated with that task. Bounties are pretty challenging because you have to specify them really, really precisely, and there may be a lot of things that are difficult to specify very precisely. So I think bounties are a pretty small portion of the way that DAOs get work done and compensate people. Oftentimes, at least what I can tell you is that within DAOHaus, the way we handle it is that if somebody does something, then they'll just kind of make a proposal requesting a certain amount of money that they think what they did was worth. And then it's sort of up to the rest of the group, the rest of the DAO, to approve that or deny that. Now, usually there's a kind of a pre-process where there's sort of a form that people fill out, like, okay, this is what I did all over the last month. Here's what I think that was worth. And then that gets aggregated. And so there's sort of a soft governance part of it where people can have conversations about, okay, well, did what you did really warrant $5,000 for the last month? And if so, why not? What we have found is that doesn't happen a ton because we have split things into small enough groups where it's pretty easy to know what other people are up to. So it's pretty hard to get away with like requesting too much money. In fact, probably we have the opposite problem where people are not asking for enough because they're so like community oriented that they want to leave money for other people. So that's one of the things we're actually grappling with. I think there's a ton of room for DAOs to improve their processes of this kind of thing. There's not a lot of standards right now. It's a big area for experimentation.
Yeah, so that's in terms of the tooling. As far as how are these decision processes made, the organization of people here is different in the different DAOs that you mentioned. Moloch DAOs, some of them have this more like inner council where those are the ones making decisions, and then others kind of emerge right from the bottom up. And that's where I think these DAOs are heading is kind of like the bottom up approach, where it's these working groups of people that are determining, okay, this is kind of what I'm working on. I know that this is, contributing to the overall Uber mission of what's happening, but ultimately, how is that valued relatively to the rest of the working groups? And it's still being experimented and tried out. But I guess kind of as we go along, I kind of see these as, they're community oriented, but ultimately they're kind of like closed loops of businesses, not really for profit, but not really not for profit either. So, obviously these communities are trying to generate money. That's why people are dedicating their time, but there's not a lot of surplus in the sense that there's, money just getting added and added and added. A lot of it is, okay, for the community, there's different ways to add value to the token. And a lot of times it's this token that reflects a portion of the DAO itself. So really a portion of the community going over and above just, your portion of the treasury and like what you're entitled to if you rage quit. Your share of the DAO that's reflected in this token is more than just kind of that monetary value. So in terms of the bottoms up approach, someone can, generate this value, get a portion of this community, and then start to integrate with other communities and become more composable. So I guess that's kind of where I'm headed is in terms of composability for DAOs. You've kind of set up like this Uber DAO that is comprised of different sub DAOs, but DAOHaus is like that's what you guys do, is like you guys do DAOs. So the governance structure and what DAOHaus is bringing to the community is really set up around kind of fostering experimentation in DAOs and getting this tooling out there. How are other DAOs organized in the sense that we're bringing composability between DAOs just because they're DAOs, but like, where do we see these organizations happening? What kind of DAOs are composable with another? And is it really just like, Uniswap borrowed Compound's governance in kind of like this other way that we were talking about before, but they don't really interact with one another too much. I guess I'm more about like, how can we get composability across DAOs so that contributions to Uniswap are just as measurable, just as easy to value as someone's contributions over to Compound? Is there like, how do we approach some sort of standard in the sense that, okay, whether I'm contributing to Uniswap or Compound or Yearn, that is a contribution to DeFi. How do we unite those all together?
Are you thinking a lot here about like identity and like how does an individual like bring with them their experience from one DAO and have they get properly reflected in what they're doing in another? Is that mainly what you're thinking about?
Right, because it is aggregated almost in the individual. So that's the composability bridge almost is from one DAO to the next is, yeah, like this identity, you're bringing it to you in Uniswap, and then you're bringing it over to Compound. How can we merge those and essentially bring, I hesitate to call it capital efficiency. It's really like a matter of like just eliminating inefficiencies when we're crossing over between DAOs.
Yeah, so it's like how to close information gaps and therefore inefficiencies that would result from those.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I like sort of DAO contributor identity is a big another big area. There's a lot of different people thinking about this and working on it. Metagame is kind of an example within the one particular community where they're trying to create profiles that kind of give you where like it's a place where you can see all your activity within DAOs and what you've been doing. Deep DAO is kind of doing a little bit of this as well, where they're kind of aggregating your activity and across multiple DAOs. I think, oh yeah, Democracy Earth as well. They're all kind of trying to take on-chain information from across various DAOs, various different types of DAO frameworks, et cetera, and sort of bring it into one place for the individual and for many individuals.
Yeah, because
that go ahead.
To just kind of like, I guess, contextualize the potential problem here a little bit more is, you know, we're starting to group DAOs into kind of, like you mentioned, an Uber DAO and like an aggregator there. But as we roll up these smaller DAOs into bigger ones, are we losing decentralization, right? Like, could we just have more nodes in this network made up of the smaller DAOs and reach some, you know, more impact from like, a bottoms up type of approach?
Rather than like a hierarchy of these DAOs, is that
right?
Yeah. So I think when we talk about DAOHaus and, you know, sub DAOs within the various communities there, I guess when we say sub DAO, that does imply a certain level of hierarchy. But one thing we actually see happening is that DAOs that start out as like groups or working groups that start out as sub DAOs often actually start providing services or working horizontally with other DAOs. So one of the like smaller like sub DAOs that we helped to spin up within DAOHaus, we call the Boost Foundry. And so DAOHaus is kind of like you could think of it almost like an operating system for Moloch DAOs, where you can create, you know, apps on top of that operating system, and we call those apps boosts. A lot of those apps are the minions that I was talking about earlier. There's some other things as well that help DAOs, you know, do more or access different types of functionality. So Boost Foundry is a DAO that we help to fund to, you know, help create third-party boosts. But members of that DAO kind of have gone off and done other things elsewhere. So it's not necessarily just, you know, stuck underneath the DAOHaus or the DAOHaus umbrella. So that is something that we have seen and I think is really cool, where because that is a really clear example of autonomy. A sub DAO is not like deferential to its parent DAO or to the umbrella DAO. It has autonomy to go do other things as well and work in different spaces. So I'm not terribly concerned about the kind of this hierarchy of DAOs creating a centralizing force. Although it does help to think, we do have to, you know, constantly remind ourselves that DAOs are meant to be autonomous and we should not be creating if we're creating something that is like purely deferential to a higher, like a broader group, then maybe it's not appropriate to call that a DAO.
Yeah, and it's all about maintaining that operational efficiency kind of as you scale, right? Because as you say, the traditional top-down companies, I mean, even how we run this media project, we've got a team, we have tasks, we got a Notion board set out for kind of like the systemizations, we got the systems, these people do this. So it is ran more like a DAO, but that centralized point of control is you're able just to get things done quick with one say and it's done. So, I think it's kind of having that happy medium between staying efficient and being able to maintain operational control to avoid, like these whale attacks or just basically loss of delegation and motivation, but also keeping it decentralized enough so people have ownership, so people feel like they're a part of something. So that way that, there are groups going on, and you maintain that, open, autonomous nature. I know we only have a few minutes here, but we haven't touched much on the legal of DAOs. So I'm wondering so I guess the first question, if you can answer it briefly, that would be amazing, is does DAOHaus have a legal counsel? Do most DAOs have a legal counsel? What has been the thought process with regards to getting a legal counsel for a DAO?
Yeah, that's a hard topic. I can't really speak to a bunch of other DAOs about their legal counsel and status. I know that some do. Some of the bigger ones certainly have like legal advice coming in from their VCs or something, or like their initial funders. At DAOHaus, so Moloch DAOs lend themselves pretty well to an LLC structure. And so at DAOHaus, what we've done for our main contributor DAO, and similarly at Raid Guild, which I'm a member of as well, we've basically wrapped, and none of this, of course, is, I should just be clear, none of this is like legal advice. I'm definitely not a lawyer. I just have a little bit of exposure to what's been happening in the DAOs that I've been a part of. Whereas basically an LLC wrapper around the DAO, and it basically the LLC itself like just defers to the DAO smart contract when it comes to defining who's a member of the DAO, or I guess in this case of the LLC, and kind of the operational rules of the DAO. This is very, very simple, just kind of some pretty straightforward like liability protection for all of the members of the DAO.
Yeah, is that
makes
only available
sense
in certain jurisdictions, or kind of, how does one put a location on a DAO?
Yeah, I think if you do it definitely feels kind of artificial, right? Because DAOs are like, they just permeate everywhere. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe both DAOHaus and Raid Guild, those LLCs are Delaware LLCs.
Yeah, makes sense. Or Wyoming have been two popular ones.
Yeah.
So I kind of see DAOs as like another veil of protection, almost in a legal way. Like if you got an LLC for business you're running, and then you decentralize your DAO to have the funds managed by multi-sig, a community approach, you really kind of get out of that single member or multi-member LLC kind of concept. So it's interesting to see. I mean, we're not going to get too much into it, but it's interesting, and certainly a large use case that can't be ignored. That is, DAOs are a means to kind of finagle your way around legal issues that could come up when operating a global scalable entity that hasn't really been operated before. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go out and just create DAOs just so we don't have to follow the rules, but yeah, there's going to need to be some global rule setting almost in order to enforce good actions in the DAOs. But what's cool about DAOs is that as long as the goal is an appropriate mission, it kind of siphons itself out automatically to get rid of people who aren't contributing to the right cause or who are doing anything bad. So if there's one bad apple, they kind of automatically get pushed out because, well, they're not going to earn anything, and if they do, they're not going to be a part of anything long term. And then yeah, kind of B is like you are working towards a goal that the North Star of a DAO, and it's typically something that is beneficial to everybody involved. And so yeah, you kind of automatically get rid of something like an investment fraud scheme just by the nature of how it's set up, because everything's so open and transparent. There's no room to falsify information. There's no like hell, somebody from the SEC could come join the damn Discord and see what's going on as open as possible, see all the financials, see everything.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's just like the openness is mind-blowing, really. And yeah, I think it almost prohibits bad acting just by the nature of how it is.
Yeah, transparency and collective ownership is a really, really powerful combination. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, look, we ask you this question every single time. We got 1 minute left. The question is, if you had to pitch DAOHaus to one person in the world, inside the crypto industry or not, in an elevator for 60 seconds, who would you pitch and what would the pitch be like?
Oh boy. Okay. Inside the crypto industry, I think I would maybe I won't identify one person, but I think I would try to pitch kind of like a big DeFi founder. And not that they would be able to use DAOHaus immediately, but I would love to see a big DeFi protocol start to figure out ways to use Moloch DAOs to govern what they're doing, rather than a cabal of people on a multi-sig. The pitch would be probably more of a just planting a seed kind of thing, not trying to get them to convert immediately, but trying to describe what DAOHaus is doing and why we believe so strongly in community control and distributed power, especially very early on, in particular very early on, because of the kind of the corrupting nature of persistent power.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, Spencer, it's been a pleasure. Definitely have learned quite a bit, and I know our community is going to be ready to dive into DAOs.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun.
Thanks for coming on, Spencer. Yeah, you gave us a lot to think about in terms of different DAO structural types. Great.